There you go, Chair. So welcome to the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council. This is the board meeting for Thursday, December 5th, 2024. Thank you very much to the FCP Redmond Hotel for our room tonight. I think in the last 3 or 4 months, been in a different room every time, but we can handle it. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We have a full crew here. With that, we'll go around with introductions. Yes, sorry. What
Let's say,
Bobby Bruno, Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs. Thank you.
Gabriel Solis, Madras City Council.
Susan Cobb, Sister City Council.
Rick Riley, Benton City Council.
Tony DeBone, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Chris Pike, the Deschutes County Business and Industry Representative. Chuck Eastman, Redmond City Council.
Jay Patrick, the under boy, Deschutes County.
Chris, we haven't even fully City Council.
David Beck, Culver City Council.
Kathy Van Jam, the Pine City Council. Susan Herman, Crook County Commissioner.
Mark Shelton, Franklin City Council.
Wayne Fording, Jefferson County Commissioner.
Tim DeBoot, Tim Renee.
Derek Hopper, COIC Outreach Administrator.
Robin Madura, COIC. I think Michelle Williams, COIC Deputy Director.
Oh, right. Christine.
Hi, everyone. Christine McConnell for the Deschutes County seat for tourism and recreation. And I'm coming to you from Sun River, which the outdoor rec summit is taking place. That's why I'm virtual. And I may have to leave a little early, so my apologies on that. But I just noticed that it's in the report. So I'm in real life at the summit. It's mentioned in the CET report. Thank you.
Well, it looks like you are the only board member that's not in the room, but it's okay. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Henry Beam down there at the end. And then, yeah, and Scott Brooklyn.
Bob County, Director.
Patrick, COIC office is funding.
Dana Dunlap, adult education and training manager, COIC.
Matthew Ramirez, COIC adults, training counselor.
And the other folks are guests to our meeting, correct?
Yeah,
So
Thomas works at our, the market at CET, is our union rep. Thomas,
Okay, great, thank you.
a quick introduction, and then we'll go over to John Hanlon. I serve on the City of Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Sinetta. I'm the union liaison for Amalgamated Transit Union 757 at COIC and CET. And also a member of the Central Oregon Labor Chapter as well, vice chair and treasurer.
Great, thanks for joining.
John Hannon.
And John, are you around?
Yes, I'm here. I'm waiting for public comment. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thanks for joining us. At this time, service story. Thank you for joining us.
And would it work best? I know it's not great for those that are online, but maybe stand here.
Yeah.
That would be great. We can have that spot.
My name is Matthew, like I just said a moment ago, and I get to share a pretty unique success story with everyone tonight. This is a unique story because it's actually very rare when we get to work with refugees due to the restrictions under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. This was a rare exception due to the situation and the care of our team really wanting to help, which we did. I first met this couple, Anna and Peter, last spring while working at the front desk at the Bend WorkSource office. Peter spoke no English, and his wife, Anna's proficiency was only slightly better at the time. We used Google Translate on our smartphones initially to meet, and over the course of the next several weeks, their story unfolded, which was a remarkable one. 3 months prior to our meeting, they had fled the war in Ukraine with their 2 children. The final push to leave came after an air raid bomb narrowly missed their children's school while they were inside. The family escaped, officially becoming refugees, and after a brief stay in Salem, they arrived in Bend, Oregon to rebuild their lives anew. In Ukraine, Peter ran a successful custom home finishing business, and Anna, with a master's degree in physical education, taught in high school and coached several sports at advanced levels. Starting over in a new country posed profound challenges. Alongside the trauma of being displaced, they faced unique and extensive barriers, including navigating federal, state, and local bureaucracies. Doing so, adapting to social norms that we take for granted, and all doing this while trying to learn brand new language. To overcome the communication barriers, East Cascade Works invested in these new AI translation devices for us and for them to use in their personal life. And this enabled almost real-to-real-time translation between us, which is really effective. Normally, we aren't able to assist financially due to legal funding restrictions, but in this case, they were able to step up to help. These tools facilitated very clear communication between us, which allowed me to do things like create resumes, cover letters, do extensive career guidance and exploration. Even though we didn't speak the language, it was quite a remarkable experience. Peter was determined to return to his craft as a master carpenter. Personally, together, we contacted over 30 local employers together, advocating for him. We even found 2 Ukrainian-owned construction companies in Portland and Eugene who stepped up to help to be a mentor, to be a business mentor to him. While most employers were sympathetic and offered networking opportunities and resources, none were prepared to hire this new language barrier at the time. Realizing that the only option was to restart his business from scratch, we connected him with our local SBA, small business administrators, and as well as COCC's business team, who stepped in and really took the ball and helped him start his business. We are happily proud to report that he has launched that business again in custom home finishing, and he's already building his client base. So meanwhile, Anna has returned to her passion for coaching, which includes working with talented athletes in skiing and gymnastics. Both children are thriving in middle and high school, and the family has been deeply embraced by Central Oregon and the local Ukrainian community, which has been really neat to see. Their English skills have also improved dramatically, furthering their transition. Supporting Anna and Peter required creativity and adaptability, often pushing our team to improvise and do things that were new to us. However, the one thing that transcended every challenge is that the unyielding desire and passion to serve all those who seek help, no matter what their circumstances are. Thank you.
Right. I'd say thank you very much for doing that. I had, my brother, he was up in Lithuania. That's, and he married, and I have a new sister-in-law and 2 new nieces from Ukraine. And that he got married in June. And so I went through and 20 years away. But it's really awesome to meet people from other parts of the world, but especially they came to Ukraine. They were living in Lithuania. And they speak, unlike most of us in this room, they speak all 3 of them speak like 3 languages and do it well. I mean, I guess they do. Incredible people. That story really is very clear.
Yeah.
You know the answer, and I'll be happy to go, but what are the funding barriers he was referring to?
Dana? Yeah. Are you aware of the funding barriers that he was referring to? Would you care to share a bit more on that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
WYLA, we are restricted to only be able to offer funding to individuals that are either legal support or citizens. And so we couldn't enroll them and provide any monetary funds. However, being able to get an exception to get that translation right, and then we just volunteered our time and finding work.
So even the refugee status is qualified.
It doesn't, not under WIO.
Is that a federal? Or is that-
That's the workforce
Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act.
and could be on the chopping block. So for the board, in terms of what we may have on the horizon in the future, it would be something that we would come to you, ask for letters of support or outreach to our federal delegation to be supportive. Thank you, Dana.
Great, thank you. Next item is public comment. Mr. Hyatt.
Good evening, board members. My name is John Halen, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I live in Central Oregon, and I serve on 2 City of Bend committees, both of which have significantly smaller budgets and public reach than COIC. Despite that, our meetings are recorded and made available online for the public to access. It's concerning that COIC, a government body responsible for essential services like public transit and economic development, and managing over $70 million annually, does not provide the same level of transparency. This lack of public access is especially troubling given the recent challenges, including delays with the audit, rumors of potential service cuts to Cascades East Transit, and the ongoing issues at Hawthorne Station. These are critical matters impacting thousands of residents, and yet the public has no direct access to the discussions or decisions being made. There is simply too much happening behind the scenes. Our community needs a flashlight to shine on the process, and recording and posting your meetings online is a straightforward solution. It's time for COIC to prioritize transparency, rebuild public trust, and ensure the community has access to the information they deserve. Let's start out the new year on a good foot and start posting our meetings online. Thank you.
That's gonna be, you have to do that. Anyway.
And so we are, so we do not post the videos online, and it is something that, and I appreciate, I know that John brought this up at last month's meeting as well. It is something that is on the horizon. And I also would encourage, we do not have service cuts that we are intending. So if there's something that you're aware of, I'm happy to meet with you, or you're welcome to connect with Bob as well. And any concerns that you have with Hawthorne, I'm not aware of those. And so I would love to have an opportunity to learn more if there's something that we are unaware
Is there any other public comment from anyone else?
Yes, I would like to speak if I may.
Sure, thank you.
Hi, my name is Thomas Sinetta, Union Liaison for the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 757. I'm also an employee at the Hawthorne bus station, so I can speak to some of the that particular issue that Mr. Halen mentioned. The reason I'm here tonight, though, is because we are currently in bargaining for a new contract. And CET has historically been below the market rate of CDL drivers in Central Oregon. Also, our other positions, there are many that actually start below $20 per hour, which is with the offered rate for somebody with no experience to work at Taco Bell. If we want to increase our retention and we want to increase the attractiveness of working for COIC for a long amount of time, then there needs to be an adjustment upward in the wages, not just a survival wage, but a living wage where people can thrive and they can do very well in their lives and be able to afford to live here in Central Oregon. The cost of living is over 12% higher than the national average, but our wages have been historically low. Our cost of living increases have been historically low, below inflationary rates. So we are consistently losing our economic power as we stay employed with this organization. So we have a historic chance now. I know that there was a very nice increase to the budget, and I really feel that we should be able to at least get to market comparables in this round of bargaining that we're in. The other major concern that has been put forth by the drivers and other employees and passengers is the security situation both at Hawthorne Station and our major transit hubs. We need to have more coverage, more hours. People need to have a sense of security and safety when they're traveling and getting this transportation, their needs met. A lot of these employees that are still been here for a while were working during the pandemic. Frontline workers, we never received any hazard pay, but people stayed just the same and worked hard to still provide that service even in that dangerous time. So I'd like the council to really be in touch with Tammy Bainey and the other people on the negotiating team and Bob. We are very excited to have Bob with us, and the way to get his vision and the vision for COIC and CET moving forward is to make sure that you make it an attractive place to work, and we can realize that vision for providing safe public transportation for Central Oregon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
If I may, I just want to say a thank you to Thomas as well. The commitment of time is a lot during bargaining, and I just wanted to say thank you for making time to do that, what you do as well, to represent the union.
You're welcome. It's an honor.
I have actually ridden the bus probably in the last several weeks, probably 5 times. And same route, Matthews. But the last time, on my way back, I had a security officer on the bus. And I've seen the security officers down there at the Redmond station. Whenever I go down, there's one of them out there watching people just speak. And I do think that, I agree. I think that's important. I think we need to have that on around our bus.
Thank you for that. We have made an intentional effort to increase the safety and increase the presence. Sometimes it's just that diversion of someone being there just for present. And so I want to thank Bob for his leadership in getting some of that worked out with our contract. I know that there's more we can always improve, and so I appreciate it coming forward as well, but it's something that we are very intentional about right now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for those comments. And anybody else? Sure.
I have one for Susan. I want to use public comment and say thank you for the candied pecans.
Okay.
There are recipes back there as well. And so for Cobb's candied pecans, thank you so much. They're good on the salad. They're good just in a handful as well. But there are recipes back there as well. And then we can send this out if anyone is unable, if you don't have a copy.
You came up, put a handful right on my salad and said, that was wonderful.
I ought to be my refried beef.
Thank you, Susan. You're welcome.
Okay, item number 4. Let's see. Thank you, board members, for service. So there's some folks that are not going to be with us after this next year. I want to thank everybody that has run for office and served. And there are also maybe some other rotations coming. So do you have any specifics here? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll stand so you can see me. So we have some transitions off our board this year, and then also in front of you, because we have a holiday that's coming up as well, you all have a card and a little piece of candy. And Christine, we have yours. We'll get it to you. But last year and the year before, we've donated in your honor to Neighbor Impact. And we did the same again this year. It's interesting that our community, we continue to struggle with food insecurity more and more and more. And that has to go right back to what Thomas was saying in terms of the cost of living and people's budgets. And so on behalf of you, we have in your honor made a donation to Neighbor Impact. Nice. And it will serve roughly 3,000 meals for individuals around the region. And just wanted to say thank you so much for your commitment of time and what you do for us in guidance and support. And thank you, Derek, for being my partner in crime and festive. And so we'll start there. Christine, you probably can't see him, but he has his, we have festive glasses. 3 eyes. Okay.
I see your glasses. Very fun. Thank you for the generosity.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. So the other piece is that we have 4 members that are leaving their roles. So Jay has been representing education and employment on behalf of Deschutes County and has won an election, which means that he is ineligible to serve in that particular role. And so we would be transitioning out of that role, and whatever the future holds, it holds. But for this, that will be a transition.
And if I be Clifford, then take his spot.
Well, there you go. So you all can duke that out, but yes. And the next is we have Commissioner Forty, who I've had the pleasure to work with for many years in different capacities. And you have been just an unwavering, steadfast supporter at COIC, one of the individuals that brought me on. And so either that's a blessing or a curse, I'm not sure. Good thing my review's not right now, but just want to say thank you on behalf of COIC for your dedication and the commitment that you've made as well. We have Counselor Cobb, who is also transitioning out. And so thank you so much. And
It's been a pleasure.
what I love is the ability to really get into the details and help us refine what we do and who we are and allow us to really grow in those spaces. So I appreciate that very much with your leadership.
Thank you.
And so we also have our Vice Chair, Kathy Van Dam, who is moving on as well. And so thank you for taking the reins. And I know there were occasions where it's like, oh boy, okay, so I get to chair the meeting and it's sort of trial by fire, but you've done an incredible job of being our vice chair and guiding us through the last few years, and just really appreciate that too.
And I'm glad we got to get Bobby's rules once in a while.
Yes, and we do use Bobby's rules sometimes, yeah, because Robert's pretty formal. Bobby, we love Bobby's. And so thank you so much. So we have a gift for you, and we also, we have, I didn't know what you might want, but we have we have 2 of the COIC hydro flasks with a few little goodies in it. And then we also have the new, are these called Big Dumb Cups? Is that what Big Dumb Cups? So we have the big, yeah, with the big dumb glasses. So so we have these as well with a few little goodies in it. And so I have 2 and 2. So
I'll take the smaller one.
you want the smaller? Okay, so if we could pass that down. Jane, you can have that. And then the other thing that I want to let you know is that we have planted trees, and the notices will come. But we planted trees on your behalf for the reforestation after wildfires. And so it's an opportunity, you've planted roots here with us, and it's an opportunity to plant roots for the investment that you've made in us as well. So we will carry that forward.
There we go. Those big cups are the hip thing these days.
Yes, they are very hip. So you want to
take a big one.
take
There you
a hip
go.
mug? Do you want to be?
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay, there you go. Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, all right.
I'll see you there. Well, thanks, everybody. A little bit of recognition, elected officials, some appointed positions here, and this is Central Oregon. Remember, it's the Tri-County office, the 3 counties and the cities involved, and this is a big footprint for everybody working together. Thank you.
The last thing I'll note is that your appointment letters for your seats and for the appointed members that are appointed by the commissioners are coming next week. And so the request is that you get those back to us as soon as possible. We recognize that part of your new boards are not seated until after the next meeting. So we will not be having a January meeting because we will not technically have a board. And so we look forward to seeing those of you that are reappointed in February. But those letters allow us to know who it is that we should invite to the meetings. And so for your commissions and councils, please do get those on your agendas in January so that we can have an opportunity to meet in February.
Yep. So yeah, you can send them the regular, if you might go get that. You're appointed for a while though, I think. I think so. Okay, yeah, so that was January meeting now. So we will not have a meeting in January, so 1st of February.
Yes.
At this time, it's consent agenda, so we've got, board minutes from last month, financial reports, department reports. Thank you to the staff for putting that all together, it's always an interesting read. Any questions, or is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
We got it.
Been moved and seconded. Since the majority by far is in the room, all in favor? Christine? There we go, okay. Anybody opposed or abstaining? Seeing none, consent agenda passed. So at this time, program update. So this is the one big topic tonight is our transit update. We want to welcome Bob Townsend to COIC. A lot of history, well known in the area, and this is the opportunity for all of us to work together, think about the big picture and where we're going to go with transit. Thank you for stepping up and your leadership.
Boss.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and stand here so I can really intimidate everyone with my height and charm.
Well, the camera's getting you good.
Yeah,
No,
it's so perfect. And charm, thank you for noticing. Just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to give an update. Excited to talk about some of the things we've been doing already here in my short time frame, and then also moving forward, giving you kind of a rundown on what's next. Before I get, most of you know me from ODOT, you know, being with ODOT for more than 25 years, and as I told some of you at the last meeting when I was introduced, I couldn't be more excited about this. I'm at a point in my career where I can, you know, I thought long and hard about what my choices were going to be the last 7 or 8 years before I retire, or 10 or 15, who knows what life will tell me to do. But one of the reasons, and I certainly had a big impact, and I'm very proud of all the work I did at ODOT, but in looking at where I could really have an impact on transportation and public service, I'm really passionate about this role at CET and COIC, and think that although, you know, being involved on the North Corridor project, Highway 97 projects up and down the state, and projects on the freeway, certainly I've been really proud of my extended footprint on a lot of that. But I think the next 5 years with transit and public service through the transportation network and the use of transit in Central Oregon is the biggest growth opportunity, and why I'm super excited to be here and super proud of some of the initiatives we're going to talk about tonight, and really making one step after another until we get where we want to go. First slide here. Second. Also, since we're paused here, I don't have any regrets about leaving ODOT. I do have regrets about working with some people and not getting to say goodbyes. And certainly if I was still on COIC or Central Oregon Area Commission on Transportation, I would have about a 10-minute speech on Wayne's departure from public service in Central Oregon. And so since I have a little bit, I just wanted to say a special thank you, Wayne, for all the support you've not only given me, but ODOT and transportation as a whole. Just that even keel mindset and a passion for doing what was right, even if it was hard decisions. I couldn't be more grateful for our experiences overlapping. So I want to thank you for your service. So a lot of topics tonight, and certainly stop me along the way, ask any questions, or, you know, some of the things are going to lead to discussions. I do kind of have an order, and certainly we'll have time at the end to for that. But today I wanted to go over just some current projects and status updates on where we're at. I wanted to talk about a couple of recent grants, not all of our grants, but certainly want to give you a little bit of background on what, you know, where some of our funding comes from that we don't normally talk about. Most of the time, though, I want to spend on our 2025 initiatives and moving forward what transit should and could look like in Central Oregon. Next. So let's just project status updates real quick. This is this week picture of Hawthorne Station. Most of you know that we've been under construction for at least a little longer than we wanted to, but we're nearing the end. It should be all finished by Christmas Day, hopefully. There may be a few signs here or there, but the others, this is half the parking lot that's done. You can see our new bus shelters and things like that, where, you know, the purpose of this project was to upgrade facilities, ADA, safety, lighting, heated sidewalks, all those things, but it was also to minimize our footprint in the surrounding community about having to park buses in front of people's houses and things like that. When this is all done, our footprint will be on our property or our frontage. We won't be across the way anymore. And things like that, unless there was an emergency situation. And so hopefully that's all wrapping up here. You know, if anybody ever wants to come by and get a tour of the outside or inside, happy to do that. My office is at Hawthorne, so excited to have that one nearing completion. Mobility hubs, this has been a big discussion. There's a lot of transportation system plans, whether city or Bend, our long-term plan that has a lot of discussion around mobility hubs. And certainly you'll be hearing more and more about those as time goes on, but I wanted to highlight these two just as these are the two bookends types of mobility hubs that we talk about. You know, there's no set definition on what a mobility hub is, right? We stretch the definition to meet our standards. So we have two here that we're talking about now. Troy Field, which is downtown Bend, basically. It's a mobility hub that really is a connection point for us and for the city of Bend, right? The use of transit in downtown areas helps with parking, you know, helps with mode shift, all those things, but really it has to be a partnership. And in this case, the city's parking rates and other things will determine how many people use that stop for us, or the availability of e-bikes and other things that the city's tackling right now. For us, it really just is a bus stop there connecting to others. Where we have the mobility hub on the north end that we're looking at acquiring property, and we're working with ODOT, and we're in the process of, we've reached some tentative agreement that we want to purchase the property. There's some legal things that have to go on from ODOT's side, but hopefully by the end of 2025, we'll be signing an agreement to purchase that property. That property is at the corner of Cooley and Business 97. Right in front of Lowe's. It's where Kiewit, the contractor on the North Corridor, has been parking all their equipment the last couple of years. It's about 3.5 acres. That mobility hub, different from the downtown one, which is really just I don't mean to diminish it by saying it's a fancy bus stop, but that's the difference between that and Bend North Corridor is that hub will be an area where we run multiple buses in and out of. We could have airport shuttles there. We could have our Bend Redmond Community Connector could drop there instead of going into Hawthorne, all those types of things. So it'll have a lot of activity. Certainly, you know, it'll have other components about charging stations, you know, bike racks, connection to other services. And certainly at 3.5 acres that, you know, it leaves room for a little bit of growth that may be a site of future offices as we grow and things like that. And so those are the two different types. We're certainly looking at the south end of Bend. There's some in certain plans, identified locations. Part of it becomes the property in Bend is so expensive that are we better off paying a couple $1 million for a piece of property and trying to work it out exactly how we want, or are we better having a public-private partnership where we look to, like on the south end, we work with Walmart and use the back of their parking lot to connect. So there's going to be a lot of movement on this over the next 5 years. Certainly the city of Bend's GO bond has around $8 million dedicated to the development of mobility hubs. If you look at other communities, Sisters is going to start construction on theirs, where some of that is being funded through the STIP or the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, the Transit Payroll Tax Fund. And certainly as we broaden, there'll be other areas. We'll look at Madras. We have our hub in Redmond. We'll look to continue to expand those, but these are the two on the immediate horizon with the Troy Field. We're at about 75% plans. We hope to, you know, come to agreement with the city here sometime after the first of the year on how that'll operate and then proceed with construction. The Bend North Corridor, like I said, acquisition 2025. Once we know we're going to move forward and we are firm that we're not wasting money, we'll probably tie acquisition and an initial plan together so that by the end of 2025, we have what our initial first phase will look like for that property. Some other internal things, just as a quick note, we have a lot of these little projects that we've received grants funding for. They've been on the list, but because of staff shortages, because of COVID, they just kind of sat there as we were, you know, prioritizing and triaging. Basically, the joke is, right, why didn't some of these things get done is because some of the supervisors and other people were out driving buses because we didn't have enough bus drivers. Now we do, so we're able to tackle some of these. The bus stop improvement project is placing bus shelters at a lot of those every use stops in Bend, and certainly we have MPO funding for some of it, and so that has to stay within the MPO boundary, but we have other funds for our community routes to add those to. It's updating signs, it's putting benches in, it's around $300,000, which is pretty significant when you talk about purchasing, benches, sign upgrades and things. And so that'll be starting after the first of the year. We're making the orders now. Pretty excited about getting that. Certainly that front facing, if the stops are in terrible condition, if there's not benches there, that's our first line of defense for not getting the riders we want. Internal CET updates, most of the time you guys don't hear about what's happening behind the scenes, but for the first time, we're at a stable bus driver level from the last 5 years or so. And so that makes a big difference. We can actually expand service now where we didn't have that opportunity before. We were just holding on. Now there's two sides to that. There's the CET side where we handle the community connectors and some of the Bachelor and some of those other routes. And then there's the contract side in the fixed route in Bend. Now the contractor is still having some trouble obtaining enough bus drivers, but it is looking positive. So we're excited about that. This board has approved, budgets in the last couple of years that included a larger number of bus drivers than we could actually get. Now we're finally getting to those. Also approved an organizational structure update that includes new management positions and a restructure, and so we can continue to grow. And we don't have, for example, we have one person now who supervises 35 bus drivers. That's just not sustainable, and so we're going to be making a lot of those organizational changes over the next 6 months. So really excited. Those are as we talk about our 2025 initiatives and chicken and egg, really without some of those improvements, we don't have the background and roots to support these changes. So super excited about those. Just on the grants, and like I said, on the grant spreadsheet, we have about 57 to 65, depending on how you read if they're closed out. But I certainly we have formula funds based on the payroll tax by county. That is a lot of our funding. We have some other federal funds, but unlike most other, ODA and other places, we have to have grants, right? And that's what makes it difficult to budget when people ask questions around, well, what's your max service you can provide? Well, today it's this. We think we're going to get X amount of grants 2 years from now, but we still have to apply and get it. So how do you put that in the budget, right? It's like you're at home, you tell your wife, hey, yeah, I'm planning on winning the lottery in 2 years, so I'm going to count that $1 million to my budget. It's how realistic is that? We think it's pretty realistic based on our past history, but that's an unknown. And that's when we get into these budget discussions and these specific questions that I've been getting a lot over the last 3 months. Well, tell me what it'll cost to do that. Do you have enough budget? And I'm like, well, I need 5 more bus drivers. We're still having a little trouble. And then, yeah, I can fund it for 2 years, but that turnover, if we don't get, this is approximately, $3+ million in grants. If we don't get that, then we're having a discussion. Just recently, this was on Monday, the STIF discretionary, and the payroll tax has formula sided funds, and then it has discretionary funds that are through a grant application process. And so certainly we did very well on our application process. We actually got 6 awards for COIC, which was more than any other entity got in the state. Maybe not money wise, but certainly for the items we needed. We were awarded flat funds probably 18 months ago, maybe a little bit more, that are designated by the year Federal Lands Access Program from Western Federal Lands. And these are competitive again, and this is for Mount Bachelor buses. But those buses will also be used on the system outside of those timeframes. And we finally come to agreement with Western Federal Lands, so we're going to be able to move forward with purchasing those after the first of the year. So excited. We have some other state funds here for buses. These 2 buses are in particular for the Warm Springs route. We have others of these, but I just wanted to highlight on this, so you can see, like, yeah, we have base budget, but we have to have these. We don't use any of our base budget for new vehicles, never have. we only are buying new vehicles based off grants, both federal, some of these and things like that. And so if we don't get those, you know, it's challenging. And so when you look at, we're going to talk about fares in a little bit, and let's just, for number purposes here. So this is, I can't remember what I added here, but 2.1, 2.5, so 4 almost, but let's say not counting routes that we had fares on last year, so not counting Ride the River, Mount Bachelor, Lava Butte things, let's say we have around 350,000 rides in our system. You know, we talk about this $1 or $2 a ride, yeah, it would add up. That's, you know, 350,000 or 700,000, depending on how you do the dollar. I'm just doing some straight math, but 700,000 is, these buses are 425,000. It doesn't go a long way. So fares are important to balance us for a lot of reasons. And when we talk about fares, certainly income is important. It's making sure people are riding where they are. And we have routes that are fixed routes in Bend, for example, last year, or it costs us about, based on our ridership and cost, maybe about $3.50 per rider. Dial a ride in Redmond costs about $20 to $25 per rider. So by charging fees in certain areas and there's percentages, you can't charge fixed route $1 and dial a ride 10. There's a percentage requirement there, but certainly these are all the variables when we get to fares. And I only bring it up now, it's just I want you to see how that type of money reflects on these. It'll only be 10 to 20% of our total budget, even in the best case scenario for most part. Now that's on the main system. I always talk about it. And I'll continue in a second, Chris, is the fares on the rec routes. We're very unique in the state of Oregon that our fare recovery percentage on a whole is very high because we're at 100% on 4 different services that we provide, where other people, you're struggling to get to that 20-25% number. And I'll break that down a little bit later.
So Bob, on that, I was just curious on the funds, is funding is separate, is there separate funding for additional maintenance service personnel? When you're adding more buses, are you keeping the same personnel at the level that they are staffed at now, or is there?
Yeah, so normally you would be like, oh, as you add buses, you have to add personnel. Since our buses are so old, when we add new buses, we can just maintain because we're going to have less service time on them and things like that. Now, that's not always the case. We'll get to a threshold. But one of those positions that's been budgeted for a while and just haven't had success in filling was a 4th mechanic. And so we now have a 4th mechanic for the first time in a long time. And so before, where we were just triaging all the time, now we're back to a regular preventative maintenance schedule and not having to contract out services. So that's made a ton of difference. Just, and he started the same day as me a few months ago, and already we're seeing huge dividends on just that one extra person.
Thank you.
Next one. So initiatives, and I have slides on all of these. I have them in numbered order because I wanted to talk about what comes first and how do we get this. The question I always get is how do we get back to fares, and that's very valid, and we should be at a higher level than we are in certain areas. That doesn't mean every route will have fares. Certainly that'll be up to the board to help us decide. But as we get to that down here, and the goal of 1 to 6 is we're already doing these. We're in efforts to do these. The goals would be service out expansion, hopefully by June of next year, fares hopefully by September. And I don't mean to preclude if the board decides against fares, that's fine, but we'll have all the data to make that. And if we want fares tomorrow, we can have them. Right now, we can't. We don't have the operating mechanisms to collect money and do some of the other things that we need. That's kind of lapsed since, you know, we shut fares off before COVID on the majority of the routes. Again, we're still charging fares on our rec routes. But so we're going to talk about how we're using data to make some of these tough decisions. Service hour expansion, specifically the Bend fixed route back to pre-COVID times. We're going to talk about this, how to ride the bus, the pass system, which has a lot of benefits, service area expansion, not just in Bend, but in our rural areas. A new approach to how we're going to attack outreach and engagement, and then a little bit of a discussion on fares. And so those need to be in order. Obviously, we're working on these a little bit, but we need to get a few checked off the box before we can implement. And then the two at the bottom, I'll talk about at the end, but as this is all going along, we have a couple important areas. And just on the updated mission statement, I'll show you our current mission statement. And apologies if anybody in the room helped draft it. Tammy, I don't think so, but it's very loose. And as Commissioner DeBonne and the executive board, like what's guiding us, some of these things and how do we get it? I'm not a firm believer in everybody's got to have a mission statement that everybody repeats that works for you, but you have to have something so that it helps guide us. Is it healthcare, transportation? Is it recreation and all those things, right?
I think it should be a premier transportation option for visitors and locals alike.
There you go. Well, if that's on the recording, that would be one of the options. But so that'll be something that is very important to us over the next year is we want to update our mission statement and we want to add a few values because as my expertise goes, in public service, we all need to know what that final thing is. I should be able to go any bus driver, any mechanic, and they say, hey, safety, public safety first, public safety first, public service second, and then we find other values that are important. And right now we just have a little bit of lapse in that. Some of that's cultural leadership things for me to address, but some of it's like, hey, let's make sure we have at least a little bit of a doctrine that everybody understands. So don't mind this as far as like, I got to read it. That's not what this is for. One of the things that's going to come up and everybody asks the right questions, right? I'm very thankful in the fact that transit and transportation is complicated, yet at the same time, we can all have a sense of what's right or wrong. How do we make decisions and things like that? Certainly there's experts in the transit field that help with planning and things like that. But if I show you some ridership information and it shows nobody's riding it on Friday, you're probably going to come up with the same idea as I am. Well, why are we running a bus on Friday, right? And so what I want to point out in the use of this data, we are collecting more now than ever. And this isn't tracking riders, you know, with identification cards or anything. This is just, hey, when they get on the bus, when they get off the bus, where the bus driver enters information, where we can collect automated information on how long it takes our buses to ride. We can track who's getting on where by these points. We can track it by stops, by day, by month, over a 5-year average. We can do anything. And so when we get to these difficult decisions about, we're not at our budget level of routes yet. Like I said, we haven't had enough bus drivers to be like, hey, we can serve 35 routes and we're only serving 25. Those are made up numbers. We're not at that max for our budget yet because we haven't been hiring. And it's not that we haven't been trying, we just haven't been getting enough people applying, and now we're over that threshold. And so when we get, these are all the routes we can serve for the budget we're at, including fares, or the next step is going to be, oh, we need to add a route here. And I'm going to come back with all this data and a recommendation saying, here's what it takes. And let's just say this is a City of Bend wants a new route on the northeast side or something. I'm just hypothetically. And we're going to be like, okay, in order to provide that service, we're going to have to we don't have an extra bus. We're going to have to take that bus from somewhere. We're going to have to take those 2 drivers from somewhere. Here's 5 routes we think that probably, yeah, they're serving people, but we think they can go away. And I'm certainly going to make recommendations on those, but that's going to be through our advisory group. That's going to be through some of you making that difficult decision when we get to that point. Now, we're 2 or 3 years away from that, but that's why I'm selling that by every route, we have very complicated sheets like this so we can help it. And in that case, we'll also be like, okay, or we could add fares to that route at this amount to add it back, and or this is City of Bend in this case want to pay an additional 200,000 and then we can run it for 2 years and see. Those will be the discussions versus, oh, I have a need out here. Can you run it? Yeah, we'll add something to that right now because we can, but long-term, we're going to have to be making very thoughtful decisions based on data. And some of it's going to be based on equity issues and what areas we need to serve, what are our riders, where are they going to, those type of things. And so our next slide. And so we're developing these by every route. And so, like I said here, this is blown up a little bit. This is we run service in Monday through Saturday, typically rec routes aside. So we can see this is one route. I think this was route 1 in Bend, yeah. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so we can look at it by that. We can look at over the last months, you can see ridership is going up in 24 from where 23 is, and we don't have a couple months on there. We can do it by time in the day. Granted, we don't start until 7:30, so 7 o'clock looks terrible, but we're like, oh, we got a peak, probably going to work. What's this area, peak around noon, so we can look by routes and say, hey, that route doesn't serve anybody at noon. What if we, what if the bus that goes between Bend and Redmond helps do an extra one here, and then they serve Bend Redmond routes in the middle of the day, so we'll have. It's a little more complicated than it's been in the past, like, hey, we have one bus. Going to Prineville, Redmond, he's just going from Prineville to Redmond all day, instead of, what if there's nobody riding between 11 and 1, but we have tons of people going between Bend and Redmond to the airport, so let's move that bus over there for 2 routes or 2 laps, and then they'll go back, and so it's gonna be a lot of things like that, so it's excited to see. Certainly if anybody wants to ask, like, hey, our community connector route between Madras and Warm Springs, I want to see this information. Give me about 10-15 minutes and we'll have it, right? So that's very handy moving forward. And I lead with that because we can't make decisions without this. Otherwise, we're just, politician decisions aside, right? We want to have a purpose on why we're making these. So Tony got me yesterday at a county meeting, so I'm just gonna get him back a little bit today. Service hours expansion in Bend, and this is something I've been talking about. In Bend right now, we're moving, but where my new house would be is I can't get to work until 9 riding the bus, and that's living in town. I'm faster walking the 4 miles to get to work by 7:30 than riding the bus. So who is riding the bus when they can't get to work till 9? Now, some people you saw in the morning are going to work, some students are going to school, some of those things, but we need to get back to that 6 o'clock time frame. Or around there somewhere, so we're those first people going to work at 7:30 or 8 have an opportunity to ride. And likewise in the evening, our last one leaves Hawthorne at 5:15. And it's not like these people, when it stops here, it's not like it can bring people back to Hawthorne, because then they're just stuck at Hawthorne, right? And so really routes end at around 5:15 departure from Hawthorne, which is not, you end at 5 and you're at the hospital. Yeah, you can ride to Hawthorne, but then we're not taking you anywhere. You're done. And so service hour expansion specifically in Bend, and there'll be some other timeframes here on the community connectors, but they already start pretty early and we're capturing most of the people there. But this is the big one to get to fares in Bend too. It's really hard to go out there right now and say, hey, we need to charge fares on people who are probably just going to the grocery store, medical appointments and stuff in the day, versus, hey, we're charging people going to work too. And so certainly with bus drivers now, we can get back to service hour expansion and have a strategy on that. Oh, can I go back one slide? I'm gonna touch on everything today, even though it's not on my slide. There's gonna be discussions, right? And my history at ODOT, and it's the same here as public employees, we're not lobbyists, right? Boards and other elected officials are lobbyists, but certainly I answered questions about payroll tax. And when people ask the payroll tax that goes to transit's 0.1%, what are potential increases? If it went to 0.2 or something like that, our general routes will add a few more, right? But like I said, we have capacity to do that now. Any changes would be, these times should be 20 or 30 minutes in every major transit or city area, so that there's always a bus coming. And so if we got an increase, we would increase drivers, increase buses, and we would change those routes times. So it'd be 7:30, 7:50, 8:10. So the most you ever wait at a bus stop is 20 minutes. Now, is that necessary in Bend right now? Probably not, but long-term, hopefully, we have that amount of ridership. And so those are the impacts. It's not like, oh, we're starting 10 buses to go to La Pine. Maybe there's one more bus to Sun River and things like that, but it's really augmenting the service times when we talk about increases in payroll tax. Next slide. This is the one I like to think I knew a lot about transit just from my background and being intertwined with transit and over the years here at ODOT. But one of the things that I didn't realize and hit me as a shock, and I want to make sure everybody realizes it, because safety is the utmost importance when we're having these discussions, as I just said in our values. Our exclusion notebook, which means people who can't ride the bus, I was just assuming as you see the posters at the post office, right, there's like, oh, here's somebody, here's someone, 3 or 4. Our notebook is about that thick and grows every day from people who shouldn't ride the bus. And you can imagine, we're not getting them to stand very still and take a good picture that we can put in that. Usually they're off a video, they're under duress. The police may be in the background. And then we're asking a driver who doesn't have access to that notebook, because we can't make 10,000 copies, to tell a person who may have assaulted someone on the bus 2 weeks earlier that they're not allowed to get on. And I say that because, this week again, we had a couple assaults on the bus, various routes. One of them could have been prevented. The person was excluded before, but how is the bus driver supposed to know? We're not having him stop there. Look, Derek, oh, did you shave, or is that? And it's just, and you can imagine the other profiling that goes on with that. One of the things about passes, right, that are challenging is, there's a lot of challenging things because everybody has to have one, but they are the number one on any list about improving safety and security of the rider. Because now we have, hey, ding, 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 it went off, oh, you're excluded, right? And it's something that's imperative to our system. Yes, we'll be able to use fares and attach it to it. We'll be able to do, hey, I have a certified service dog. I'm getting a little paw print on mine, all those other things that'll help us track things, that'll reduce cat, all that's good. But as I advocate for this, because there's a lot of people opposed to ID badges to ride the bus too, I will fall on, right? I will go down swinging until I have security passes for the bus. Now, we have them for students and things at RPA and things like that, but this is a key to our success in the future and to make a safer system where we can increase ridership and things like that. And certainly will be, if you looked at that number chart, so we want to expand service, get that going. The day we expand service, by the next week, we want to be able to start issuing cards, no fares to them, just like, hey, let's get used to it. And when we say that, it's not going to be, we'll have programs where, for example, Shepherd's House can have 20 cards with 10 rides on them. Use them, hand them out as you need. If it's 20 degrees and someone's on the far end of town at 6 o'clock at night and wants to get to Hawthorne, well, we're going to take them. Now, we're not going to take people from Hawthorne anywhere, because at Hawthorne you can get a card. And so I'm not saying, it's not going to be absolutes everybody's worried about. What about tourists? They'll have phone apps, right? We'll have directions. And there's a lot of education that goes with it. We'll go out to Warm Springs and have booths where we get people cards. It's not like, oh, you've got to come to Hawthorne to get a card, right? We'll do everything we can, but I just want to stress the importance of that.
So on these cards, will we have something like a code or something that the taps at when you get on?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just not a card.
No,
that
it'll have
somebody
a barcode identifier. What's nice about these, and maybe Bend and Central Oregon aren't ready for it, but certainly you could tie these to e-bike rental. You could tie into other services as well. But for now, we just want a way to get you on the bus.
So the software would recognize that that's a valid person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then also it can be tied to a fee per route. It could be tied to, oh, you have an annual bus pass, so you're good to go wherever. It can be tied to a lot of different things.
That was part of my question is, if there could be various fares, like if you had a lower fare for seniors, some low income seniors, or some kind of.
Any fare program will have to account for low income, vulnerable, elderly type reduction. And one of the things, and I'll talk about fares in a moment, but the pass system allows us to, instead of having cash or tokens or things like that, hey, June 30th, that's getting reduced, that one's increasing, you qualify for food stamps now, your price went down, it's just so much. Yeah, because we certainly don't we're not going to be sitting there.
Yeah.
Bringing your passport in to verify.
Yeah. I mean, so that you can get a lot of, whatever fares that you need from the people that get information. not for, some people can't. really-
Yeah, no, I think the thing will be is on the fare system, and the way I talk about it is certainly it's a revenue. We've got it.
Yeah.
It is enough revenue to add a route somewhere, right? And even if that's like, hey, we have 30 routes and if you charge $1, we can have 31, we should do that. It's also a way to control ridership. And as I said, most of you probably know, but we have the dial-a-ride in Bend, that's a paratransit elderly service, right? You have to qualify ADA wise, you have to qualify age wise, and yeah, we'll take you to doctor's appointments, you want to go eat at Sherry, well, you can't go to Sherry's, but if you want to eat at Black Bear or whatever, we'll take you there, right? That's all. Yeah, that's a heavy cost because it's a taxi service. In Redmond, anybody qualifies right now. That ride rates from $15 to $30, depending on who and what. We don't advertise that because that would bankrupt us. Certainly that should have a fee, or the money we're spending there should go to other things. So that's why it makes the fare conversation so complicated on how we do it. And then it should see the next slide. It was too complicated before. It costs us more to administer it than it did revenue generation.
And on the fare discussion earlier, you mentioned 20 to 30%. Doesn't really help like by buses and stuff, but does it help with raising the employee rates for the drivers?
Yeah, I think what we are looking at is, as I've met with Tammy and, I've got my feet wet a little bit, it's just like, well, what's first on the list? What's second? Everybody thinks like, oh, I come in, my first thing is I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this. The reality is there's 10 things that all have to be done at the same time. Like, how do we get more experienced drivers? Well, we need to, as Thomas mentioned, need to assess their salaries as it compares to school bus drivers, things like that. We need to get fares so that we generate a little bit more revenue. We need to broaden the scope of, the times we have transit service so we can get the most riders possible, then even raise more fares. So it's all inclusive. It's made it very challenging, and my staff, I know, are getting tired of these special project assignments from me, but the reality is there's a bunch of heavy lifting we need to do just to get to that baseline so we can really move forward with what does transit, what is the final product we want? Because I would love to get to that area like we talked about with data. Someone comes from me, Jefferson County, and says, hey, what would it take to run a bus out there? And I can be like, here's what it takes. I need 2 new bus drivers, cost this, fuel around this. I don't have that. But here's what we can do, right? We can talk about a different fare for that route. We can talk about, oh, does the county or city want to supplement some of that? Because it's important. We can have all those discussions.
So
Yeah.
when you talk about safety, so I'm at Shepherd's House, I get a pass and I have 10 rides on it. And I do okay, but I'm on my 3rd ride and I assault someone on the bus. Is there a way to track that and nullify that?
Yeah, and generally what we would do on a case like that just allows them to get, our reality is if we can just get you to Hawthorne, you can fill something out, we'll give you a real pass or not, and then it'll control it. These temporary passes would just be that. I don't imagine we would allow more than 2 or 3 rides on a temp pass for that same reason.
Safety kind of.
Yeah, and still, even if it was 10 passes, that is a lot better than the way it is now, where
Sure, it is,
yeah. And the thing is about me, and this is a delicate balance, and certainly I would defer to the board on that. The pass system is going to limit some type of riders because it's not complicated, but it requires some work on their part, some paperwork. Now, we're going to have come to some decision on, well, how much flexibility do we give, right? And how do we do that? And there's not going to be a black and white answer to that. Certainly, though, we're going to have anybody who wants to come by, we'll have to have additional station attendants to help when we start this process, because we'll want to give everybody the opportunity. Some people won't be able to punch in on the computer because technology or whatever. Heck, before too long, I don't think I can do that. I'm losing track and in a hurry. But that'll be a discussion when we do the car. It's like, what is this decision point? And when we hear in the news, oh, I was out here and nobody let me ride the bus. And you're just like, well, the reality is we tried to take you to Hawthorne 10 times, tried to help you fill it out. You wouldn't sign the document and then you left before the card printed. What more can we do? Versus, okay, if they don't look scary, let them on this time, but that's not, realistic.
Well, also, you'll get more people wanting to take the bus if they know the safeties. take care of, like everything that we see on the Portland news, it's like, I used to want to go on the internet or whatever, it's like, yeah, I don't think so.
No, the reality
You
is,
wanna say, you know, safety so that you.
yeah, the reality is improving safety means some people don't ride.
Yeah.
That there's no way around it, and that's a service they probably really need, but there's a price, and I don't say like a literal dollar price, there's a behavioral,
Yeah.
you know, societal price to be able to ride the bus. On that note, though, when or you can go to the next slide here. On that note, when we do get to a fare system, we are gonna see a dip in ridership. That's historical, that's nationwide, that's the reality, right? Your hopes are that that's minimal. That's people that don't wanna follow the rules to ride it and things like that, but you're also hoping that it changes the dynamic on the bus. It's that old saying about, hey, I wanna have a kid with a backpack, I wanna have a guy in a polo shirt, a gal going to work out, somebody wearing a tie, you know, different races, creeds, all that on the bus. And certainly having safer buses leads to that. And then the other weird twist is the more diverse your ridership is, actually the more safe the bus is too, right? And so how do you get to that? And I say it like it's easy, that's going to be very challenging, but you know, that's our goal here. Service area expansion. So this is this weird thing I just want to cover again. If you ask me, and I don't have the finite numbers, we're working through some of that, but if 20% fare recovery is tremendous in the transit agency, as a whole, we're over 20, right? But that's because we're 100% on our heaviest routes to Bachelor, right, the river and things like that. So I could always come up here and be like, hey, fare recovery as a whole, 35% or whatever it is, but that's misleading, right? Most entities don't have the luxury that we have. And so what's very important to me on this, and I think we all agree every time I talk about it, as long as we're 100% fare recovery, we're going to continue to serve rec routes, right? That's where the people are. That's, yeah, some of these Bachelor may be making money off us hauling people up there and charging what they want, but we have the capacity. It actually, as long as we're 100% fare recovery and we have some vehicle depreciation charge in there as well, it actually allows us to provide more service because my time is spread across all these and then all our other routes. The more I add to these, even if it's a percentage or two, the less I cost the Ben fixed route. Same with Derek, same with a lot of our staff. And so it is very important to have these, right? And we're going to look at a Redmond Airport shuttle. We think that'll be 100% fare recovery just with the way Redmond's parking is and just the way Uber and Lyft have now figured out how to make a lot of money off airport. And so, and certainly as we explore those. Now, what I won't do is if Bachelor's says they only want to pay half, then we're not going to serve them in the same capacity and then take away a bus from serving downtown Bend. That's a non-starter for me. It's a non-starter for most individuals I've met with from City of Bend and county and things as we've met privately. And so we're going to continue. No one's really talked about that absolute, thank you. But that's something that's very important. Certainly defer to the board on that too, if there was other, you know, if there was some gray area, but that it's hard for me. And this is the other decision when people are like, why don't you cancel service? We don't cancel service to Bachelor unless ODOT closes the road. So it's okay for me to take 30 people up there who have $3,000 passes, but I can't run between Bend and Redmond to help someone get to work or a doctor's appointment, right? It's just a very challenging, and you can tell from the tone, I don't know how to explain it truly, but that's just a decision point that's in the back of my mind. But that's one area for service area expansion. Bend fixed routes. We don't have around Northeast Bend. We have bus stops along there, just haven't moved to that part. That'll be, you know, that's an easy one to be like, hey, that needs to happen next year. I don't know if this group has seen all the equity mapping within Deschutes County and City of Bend, but basically, if you're in the red area, it means, you know, you have high poverty rates, elderly population, other equity measurement. Deschutes River Woods is the reddest place on the map in within the City of Bend. Yeah, we don't have a bus stop there. We have a bus stop on the outside. So certainly that needs to be a discussion as we're expanding services. Why aren't we serving this area that has a high poverty rate and doesn't use vehicles as much, right? And then we have these express routes discussion that is somewhat new to Bend, but our routes, most of them down, or the town in city bed routes used to take 30 minutes. Now most of them take 40 minutes, just the roads didn't get any longer, they're just more congested, right? As we get more congested in some of these routes that, we want to make 15 stops along them, but they start taking so long, we'll probably start this express route system where maybe on 3rd Street, Greenwood, Newport, some of the busy ones, we just run a bus up and down all day. They make 2 stops, one end and the other, and it just helps people who don't want to sit in their car and move on from one end to the other. So that's a possibility. Rural, certainly Redmond, increasing this somewhat fixed route, flex route we have in Redmond is a top priority. Got Juniper Canyon. And then Warm Springs, we want to get an inner Warm Springs route that goes between Warm Springs to Nashua and Canida. And when I talk about some of these, certainly these are going to be within budget discussions that we have. But one unique advantage that Warm Springs has is they have access to other federal grants that are tribal only. And Warm Springs checks every single box that as long as we can get an application in next year, I would almost 100% guarantee that we'll get enough money for a bus, 2 drivers so that we can add that route. And so excited to try to get that together. So certainly we'll have service area expansion just on what we can do, and then we'll look at specific grants. We're actually applying for a pilot grant of about $250,000 now that hopefully will let us start that route sooner than later. Next one. New approach, and
Question. I have a question.
go ahead, sorry.
You were talking about the express route, like in Bend. I was just wondering if, I was kind of just looking like if I would use the bus, I'm from Mattress Manager. I can get to Redmond pretty well, but then to get on to Bend, it was just a whole lot. So like with there at some point, like straight to Bend kind of option.
Yeah, so one of the things about, back to that payroll tax example I used about adding times, sometimes when you add times, then you'd be like, well, they're not, like, let's say we added another bus every half an hour between Madras and Redmond. We may make that one like, hey, there's only 2 stops on that one. It's, one place in Madras, one place in Redmond. And so that it's quicker versus.
So you could have
yeah, so it's all those types of dynamic, and that's why that data on, well,
yeah,
what
so I
bus
was
stops.
just kind of like trying to imagine a day of something.
Yeah.
That I can do that. It's taking me 3 or 4 hours to do.
Yeah, and then you don't
Yeah.
know, I mean, we're within a few minutes, but
Yeah.
if someone gets off at every stop, obviously that adds a minute every time, as well. New approach, I'm way over time, all right?
No, I think you're okay.
It's very informative.
Okay. My wife always says, she's like, she used to be like, are you nervous about public speaking? But I was in student government in college and stuff, and I actually get excited about it. It's a terrible condition I have. And then I'm very unsympathetic when people are like, oh, I'm not going up in that front room. Just go up there. Yeah, sorry. I have a lot of issues that I have to deal with. Yeah. Okay. So I only say that because I'll just keep talking until at some point you're just like, I've had enough. New approach to outreach and engagement. So we have travel training as a specific phrase used in the transit world. We have a contract with an individual that provides travel training, and specifically in our case, this is in Bend. This is the paratransit dial-a-ride routes. It's a lot of people can ride the fixed route system, which is cheaper, right? In Bend, like I said, $3.40 last year. It'll be cheaper this year per driver. Those dial-a-rides are usually $13 at the cheapest, going up to $30 depending where they're going. Some of those people can ride the fixed route. They'll live a half a block away from a fixed route, but they just, it's easy when the person just pulls up. And so the travel trainer does evaluations, right? About like, you qualify, because you can imagine we have some people who take advantage of the system, and it's very hard for the, just like you see people park in handicap spots that don't have, who's going to police that? I mean, certainly I'm not going to walk by and tell someone they can't do it. Likewise on the bus, the person, our bus driver is not trained to evaluate whether Derek should have be able to ride the paratransit services. So they do that. And then it's also, it's how do you, everything from even how do you get on the bus and the ADA lifts and the handicap and things like that. And then we'll expand it to, you can imagine that's not full time once we start getting through the list, but then it's also this unique outreach where you're going to businesses, you're just like, okay, bus number 22 comes by here at 7, 8:15, 10. Your starting hours are at 7. If you change them to 7:30 and ran 15 minutes longer, we could do this. So there's a lot of good uses for that. We're contracting with it right now, but we also have budget approved for hiring our own right now. But this person's great. They work at Hawthorne downstairs, and so we're excited to do that. Specific outreach by route. Certainly, we've done a lot of that. This is our normal, and again, based on 7 level, we have one person doing about, or Derek, the last couple of years, doing about 500 things that outreach is supposed to. We want to get to where we can go route by route, have specific plans for it. We can go to a nursing home on 27th one evening and meet with them, be like, hey, this is how you would use this service. This is where our bus goes, that really specific one. And so when we talk about the data, there's 2 things. We look at the data, what nobody's writing it. Well, what did we do for outreach? When you ask me like, I want you to cancel it. And you ask me like, oh, did you meet with Costco people out there? I'm like, no, did you meet? And so our answer needs to be yes before we make those decisions. It needs to be like, we did everything possible to gain ridership along that route before we make some of those decisions. And certainly with some more staff that are going to be coming on board after the first, they're going to be designated to help with this specific outreach. We'll do a ride the bus week this year. You'll see them a lot of places, but a lot of times it's, hey, the bus is free this week. Well, we're free right now for most of it. But it's really, we'll start with challenging other government entities, right? ODOT staff, City of Bend, Deschutes County, City of Madras, City of Redmond, with how many people can you get on the ride the bus. We'll work with local media to have stories around what bus ridership, what are the benefits, all these things, right? We'll really broaden it just to try. It'll probably be a May, June. We want to do it when we expand our service hours. And really, just everybody in the community is talking about it. Hopefully everybody in here gets at least can I do it, Tammy? I don't have my wallet on me. How many people, what?
For tonight. Oh, okay, I was gonna say you might actually pay something tonight.
Did anyone ride? Well, no one rode the bus here because we don't serve that late. If you can't get home, but did anybody ride a bus today? So my rule has been, and literally I can't do it now with my staff because they know I put $100 bill on the table. I'm like, if anybody rode the bus today, they can have it. And I rode the bus like 3 times before I started. Now I'm easily over 100 just in the last 3 months because it's so convenient. In Hawthorne, I need to go down and meet with Eric King at City of, I just hop out my door, I get on the bus, I go down and come back.
Did you collect 100 each time?
Well, the last time, a couple of my staff thought I was gonna do it again, and so they all rode the bus. And then they're like, and I was just like, oh, that's not every time. And then the next time I had one of those fancy hydro flasks, knowing that they didn't ride the bus because I changed the meeting time, and then I offered it again. This is all management 101 training. But I think that's the thing is, it's not for everybody, but to not have once or twice of riding it when especially if you live in Bend, especially if you go from Bend to Redmond, it's not the convenience most times. If I go to meetings, sometimes I have to wait 30 minutes for the next bus because the timing, I understand all that, but part of it is just education. And heck, I didn't even know about pulling the cord, to get off. I was just like, don't they just stop at every bus stop? And of course, there's a sign that says you have to pull the cord prior to your bus stop. I'm like, okay. And I mean, some of that is, I'm dead serious, right? I mean, I knew from the past that I had to do it, but then I got on after, not riding for a couple of years and just went like, oh, crap, now I gotta ride the loop again. But so certainly, and I want to sit there and we do at our meetings now, at the bottom of our meetings, we tell you how you can ride the bus from different locations to that meeting, right? So I have a 1:30 today in Redmond, and so on the route, I say, hey, if you are coming from Redmond, you can leave at 12:45 at the hub and be there by 1:15, right? And so we try to do that, and it's we have our staff meetings now. Derek meets with me tomorrow actually, and we just go on a bus, ride a loop, and then we come back, and it's just starting that conversation. And even other people, seeing people like me or Derek or others on the bus is so valuable. And the more people. You give me your address, I'll tell you how to ride the bus to your next doctor's appointment. That's what we want to get to. The other thing we want to get to is engagement based on needs and motivations. And so when
why do you ride the bus? There's 100 different reasons why people ride the bus. But in Bend, what should we focus on? For me, yeah, it may take a little bit longer, to wait for the stop and things like that, but how long does it take to get from, one side of town to the other? At least on the bus, I can sit there on my laptop, I can do things, I can make calls, I can do whatever versus sitting in the car cussing at people who don't move with their green light. Certainly, I don't do that. My wife does, but so certainly on, that's a lot of people in Bend are the same way. You see the same people every day, right? And so how do we get to that? How do we get to, and this is I'm not going to make the same jokes I made this afternoon, Derek, if you were there, but the environmental benefits for people in Bend, like what is our socioeconomic backgrounds in Bend? It is very from one side to the other, east to west, right? Yeah, we don't get a lot of people on the west side who want to ride the bus, but we get a lot of those that are active in public meetings around environment protecting. So how do we advertise to, hey, what are the environmental benefits? What are these other benefits? And so certainly there's a lot more than those, but that's going to be a little bit of a change in strategy where we're trying to tackle. And are we going to get 500 people from Aubrey View to ride the bus? No, but if it's 10, that's 10 cars. If it's 100 days of the year, that's 1,000 trips, right? That's tremendous. Okay, next one. So I've talked about fares a lot. This is our old fare table, very confusing on about 8 different fees per route. And I'm not saying we can't do that. It's easier with the card, but we want someone to know. That's why $1 is too little, because if we only charge $1 on the fixed route, by law, we can only charge $2 on the dial-a-ride routes that cost us 13 to 20. So we have to have some balance. What we'd rather do is, set a $2, $3 rate and then just up our bar around who gets free or who gets reduced, kind of the free and reduced lunch, if you're in education type of thing. And so how is this going to look when we bring it back to you? We're going to do a lot of outreach. We're going to have some conversations individually amongst ourselves because the board will finalize the fare rates. But for example, does the city of Bend fare have to be the same as the Warm Springs fare? No, right? And so a lot of our legwork is going to be ahead of time, like, hey, here's some ranges, here's what we talked about, and here's a bunch of different options, ask questions, we'll go back and do it again. One size doesn't have to fit all. The easier it is to understand, the better. But at the same time, as long as at the bottom we have, hey, $200 annual pass, write it as many times as you want, that'll cover some of the confusion as well. But just know that where fares are most important to us, and I said that joke about the Redmond dial-a-ride, is Redmond dial-a-ride has to have a fare where it has to go away. We don't advertise it, we don't sell it, because it would run us into the ground if it was full usage, because it's just a taxi service for anyone. And so we have to have fares sometimes to control abuse of the system too, right? I'm not saying it's mixed messaging I'm giving you right now. I know saying, hey, we're good for the next couple of years on expanding and stuff, and we really don't know what we're getting from fares. But to get to that next step, we have to have a fare system. Whether around the holidays, we just say it's nothing for a while. With the card, we can do that, but we have to get to some type of system to be successful. Now, if you tell me like, hey, I don't want to charge fares ever, I'll tell you how we can make it work too. That's perfectly up to you, but I just want to be transparent in if we want to get to ultimate capacity, balance out equity where we should serve, hey, a couple areas that are lower population are lucky to get 10% fare recovery, but we should do it. Let's get 40% over here so that we can help implement those. Those are the type of discussions we'll have.
You can charge all fare, all in Bend.
Sure. I'll bet if we went around for a vote, we might not get one vote, but.
The part that's like, I keep getting stuck with it. It's like, I lived in Vancouver for a long time, and I remember when the buses used to run, all the area was on the bus, and I come from New York City originally, so I was like, yeah, no, I ride the bus out here, right? But as time went on, it kind of progressed like this. Now, I don't know where that point came, but the point came where they started getting robbed riders, and a lot had to do with gas prices. And kids couldn't afford to pay gas and things like that. And the next thing you know, I go over there now, they got the the Vine line, which is an extended bus.
Yeah,
They got the little ticket thing where you can walk to it, they got a heater in there, you can sit in there, you know, but I mean, I don't know where that transition takes place.
no, and I think that that's a great point, and I think that kind of fits back into my, why I'm here type of thing is, this is the time and event. You look at Third Street, you look at Greenwood, you look at, or let's take those two, they're 4 lanes, they're never gonna be 5 or 6, never, right? Traffic's only gonna increase, the only way to solve congestion or manage it is transit or mode shift, and the mode shift only works so far because, you know, from safety issues, the more people are out there, then people who ride bikes are less willing to ride it, because then it's less safe. And so transit is the answer 100 times over on those routes. The parkway is never getting wider. And so the only solution, and this, do I want to sit in the car here, or would I rather sit on the bus with my headphones on, oblivious to the world?
But you know, it's funny, because people stubborn too, because I remember
Yeah.
they were painting the I-5 bridge, right? And they shut down the bridge and they told everybody, you can take the, not the Max, what's the other train that, Amtrak. You can take Amtrak to Portland and go to work. And people jumped on that, right? On the street too, I said, going straight downtown. And they interviewed them after it was all bridge got painted. He said, how'd you like that? They said, oh, nothing, you know, I can sit there, read a book and do this and do that. I can just walk
Yeah.
out. And they still won't do that.
No, and I think that's this unique, you know, there used to be tons of discussion in Bend about this transit district. You gotta have a transit district if you're gonna have a transit. Well, the payroll tax is a glorified transit district. Since the payroll tax went into effect, there's been no other transit districts. There's a little loophole in that, but no other transit districts in Oregon. And so with some, you know, everybody contributing already, right? You know, this is where we're at. We're gonna be able to provide this level of service. It's just about getting the person to take their first ride. And, you know, that's what our bus week is gonna have. So I'm an engineer, so I can't come up with anything creative, but it's gotta be about, just come take your first ride, right? Just take one. And once we get one, yeah, some people are like, I'm never riding on that. I have a terrible time trying to convince my wife she should ride on the bus. But we're gonna get a couple people. We're gonna get a couple, and then they're gonna tell a couple people, and then that's how it's gonna go. And when you ask me like, oh gosh, that seems very hard to plan on, and that's your main strategy. The reality is that's how bus ridership goes. You have to build it so they'll come, and we're at that mode where now we can build it. We have some or sustainable funding on a route at some level. This time thing is always going to be a problem. I'll just be transparent. Yesterday I rode downtown. The private bus company had a driver shortage. I was just like, oh, my meeting's at 11. I'm going to take the 11:15 back. Yeah, they had to cancel that. I had to wait till 12:15. Certainly, that was very poor to do that to the transit director. But also just a good reflection on, until we take care of some of those loopholes, we're going to come take your first ride. If that's your first ride, that's your last ride.
Well, I'm seeing in travel in general, like when you got up here, there was a thing up in Canada, Air Canada said, you need to be very flexible when you're traveling somewhere because of things that can happen. It's like, yeah, that's not a good message.
Yeah.
People want to have reliability, you know, they can pick where they want to be.
Yeah, and it's almost if I planted that question,
Oh, wow.
because here is our current mission statement. Just like that one's not very good. Always exceed expectations of riders. Well, if your expectation is nothing, then that's a poor message to try to achieve. So this isn't what we're going to. This is just, I took about 10 different ones from across the nation and made one that worked for us. But we have to get more specific on what's important, who are we working for, employment, healthcare and stuff, so that we can make some decisions without always coming to the board, that we have a general guiding principle. And so, or before I get to you, so this isn't what it's going to be. What we're going to do is we're going to use our citizen advisory groups. They're going to get us some stuff. I'll have some individual check-ins with some of you to get some pointed. We'll probably have 4 or 5 examples. We'll bring it here. You'll give us some feedback on them. We'll take them back. We'll fix them, and then we'll come for final. But it's very important for me to get to this early next year.
Are you gonna ask your drivers what the mission statement could be?
Yeah, so mission statement and values, I didn't show any values, but mission statement is really what our charge is from a board, from a community perspective. The values thing is what the bus drivers and everyday employees are going to be able to be like, hey, safety for all, public service, the customer's always right until they're not. those type of values. So certainly they're gonna be very engaged on the value and some on this, but certainly this is for what do we see transit, and this is the one where you're gonna have to make a decision on how you say rec route. Sorry, I'll provide some guidance, but we're gonna have to address how we say rec routes can't be in the top line, type of thing, right? Oh, last one, again, please don't, this is me just making a slide.
Is that the engineer being created?
This is the engineer, this is what I did, I clip art, I searched Cascade Mountains, this one popped up. I cut and paste the CET and I changed the color, so hopefully we're a lot more fancy than this, but certainly. This doesn't speak to transportation, doesn't speak to Central Oregon. Yeah, is there a cost? Is there a cost to change all the branding and stuff? Certainly there is, but it's gonna be worth it. And like I told staff today, so we have a bunch of new vests that say CET with this. We're not gonna just throw them out. They're gonna be worn when they're used out, then they can have a new vest with a new logo. Likewise on the buses, we're gonna make a determination. Every new bus will get the new logo. Then we'll do 5 more a year, but the 1988 bus gets to have this one until we have to tow it away, right? But so again, we're gonna use a lot of, we're gonna get input from a lot of different areas, you, our advisory groups, we're gonna have a couple of students at OSU Cascade, help get some art designs, we'll probably have 5 or 10. We'll bring them back to all the groups. You'll be like, I like that one. I wish it was gray. We'll get to 3 or 4 at the end and you'll vote to approve one type of thing. But again, I think this is, we should, I mean, I wanted to clip a bus up here, but I'm an engineer. I don't know how to do that. But certainly we want it to reflect.
It could be a flying bus.
Yeah. What was the example? Oh, you left before we had this discussion today. Someone had a really good one. I mean, it could have been a bus going up the side of the mountain, I can't remember, but certainly we wanted to reflect Central Oregon, whether that's Cascades, the Deschutes, whatever. I'm not in love with lowercase letters, but I'll leave that up to someone else, and we wanted to reflect transit as well. It's just as I get you, certainly you'll have a lot of feedback. Everybody in this room is generally like, hey, let's update our marketing, so, right? Yeah, okay. Last one. So what's 2025 look like for me in front of you? For sure, and these will require approvals, fair rate, fair implementation, and it's not gonna be like, hey, here's the meeting, I need approval. It'll be a process, but certainly that'll be in front of you. Mission value statement will be in front of you. We'll want approval on that, logo approval. These are ones, I don't want to have to come here every time we want to add a route or things like that, but certainly we want feedback. That mission statement will help us determine like, oh gosh, they did put routes on the top, so we're going to find some more of those versus no, they want to serve low equity areas and things, then we'll address it that way. And so certainly the transit pass thing, as most people, once you get into the details, think it's great. There is a lot of opposition to tracking people, to having additional ID cards that we're going to have to work through. There's going to be a lot of public sentiment from certain riders saying, I don't want that, but that we can always come back to safety, and I'll have 100 examples of people who were on the bus that would have not have been, is really easy to have to support that. And so certainly those areas are going to be more informational, just getting your awareness, support, feedback type of things, but not a vote like these will be. That was it. All right, maybe just discussion questions. So happy, or 2 things. That was a lot of information. There's a lot of different. How do you fall? When you ask 10 different people how they feel about fares, you're going to get 10 different answers. When you ask people about expanding areas, obviously you're going to support the areas you work from. I understand that. But you guys also understand how to come to consensus and agreement, which I appreciate. But if you want to meet, if you want to review route data, any type of those, I'm happy. I've been meeting with tons of people already. I'm happy to do that anytime. I'll even let you ride the bus to Hawthorne for free to meet with me if you want. But please don't be afraid to have some of these discussions, because they are, they're, yeah, maybe some of them are party lines. Maybe some of them are, I grew up on the West Coast, I'm from the East Coast, this is what I'm used to. There's all these biases or factors behind our opinions, but it's very helpful to talk them through. For example, like the rec route one seems like it's an automatic one, but not some people you talk to, they're like, hey, that's where most of the people are going. You should serve that. That's your people, right? No matter the cost. And so there's just a lot of varying opinions on these. And I'm happy to have those broad discussions.
Just wondering on the van pool, is there a fee for those? And those are also no fair?
Yeah, so the van,
How's the van pool?
yeah, so I'll tell you how the van pool worked before. I'd like to say before I came here, but it just happened to be the random timing. Van pool was, 4 people, sometimes 3 in certain cases, have the right to a single business. So 4 of us live in Bend and we're going to Bay 6 and Redmond, and someone Enterprise provides the car. I pick up everybody and I go to Bay 6, and then I do the same on the return. The program before was 100% subsidized, no driver costs. The program paid for insurance, all the fuel, and it paid for 250 miles on the vehicle to be used outside of driving it. So if you had to go get the oil change, so 100% subsidy, which isn't sustainable, but no one was using van pools as they were relatively new. Well, what happened is we got up to 70 users right away because it was free, right? Everyone was using it. Well, the money ran out. So the industry standard is to get to around 50% and the drivers pay for the fuel. And so that's what we're at now, but now we're down to 17 users as of yesterday. We're hoping to gain a few more back because it's still, we pay half the price. The price is generally around $1,500 or $1,600 for the insurance, mileage, and we're paying half of that. Is a pretty good deal still for
Well, I
people.
noticed that's one of the things in Victoria's that I have noticed people using, so that was one that I was kind of interested in.
Yeah.
People in my area.
Yeah, and part of it too, and I'll just be transparent on it. Some of the basics had 19 for them. Some of them were just, these rural areas, they're perfect, right?
Yeah.
Metolius doesn't have a bus service. Culver, certainly, yeah, let's get 4 people around. That's the service they didn't have. There is a service between Bend and Redmond. For the money we paid the last year, we could have added one more bus at 5:30 in the morning and just go and pick them up, right? Yeah, and so van pool is very good. It has very high numbers on return on investment, taking cars off the road. But at the same time, I think we spent about $1 million last year. Where else could that $1 million be used? And so it'll be nice to get to a baseline set of data to be like, hey, this is, in these areas, we'll use it. In these areas, we could have changed the fixed route schedule and we could have picked you up at your door and done the same thing relatively.
Yeah, because some of the people, for their employment, a barrier to their employment is, maybe they can't drive or maybe they don't have a car or transportation, so it fixes so many other things by having the transportation.
Yeah, and part of this is we need to get people on the right system, right? Like I said, on the 80, we have some people using a system that's very expensive when they should be other. We were 100% subsidizing van pool, when part of it is when we went to left, they probably found more efficient, right? And so that, I know we've been around a long time, but since the payroll tax is really the start of time for us, because it's the first time there was sustainable funding. There was sustainable funding in other capacities, but this is set on payroll tax. It's somewhat predictable. We know what we can have, and then we need to start making decisions to use that money the most efficiently.
I want to commend you on your presentation.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm still on appreciate the sense of priorities and, after spending some time seeing the system, and this is how we need to work our way through it. Yeah, I just really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. And I think it goes without saying, I'm an overshare. I'd love to get into the weeds of, even how we change the oil on, and just so people can see how complicated some of the things, but even some of these route choices and stuff. Certainly, I don't want to, like I said, bring everyone here, but I am happy to discuss it. I know several of you have met me in my office, right? We've we've talked for an hour on random things around transit. It's just, I consider myself an expert in transportation and I'm still learning a lot on just Central Oregon transit. It's very unique, right? We have these other areas. Yeah, there's some inner city connects in other parts and there's, TriMet, Salem, Eugene, right? But we have it all, right? We're going to Warm Springs, we're inner city connectors, we're downtown Bend, right? Ours is such a unique system compared to others. All right, thank you very much.
One of the things, some of those policy choices, some of the decisions we can make here, we're representing a jurisdiction, which one of us, if there's something that gets interesting, like how much are we going to charge and who gets charged and how does it happen? It'll be us around the table, but also bring it back to our jurisdictions for support or have to sell it to them, or this is why we made this choice. So it could get a little interesting. It's always interesting.
I agree with this gentleman that Ben just pays it all.
See, and everybody's gonna vote at this table, so we'll see where. Yeah, we'll.
All of that.
Executive
Sure.
Director of.
So I'll be brief.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Bob, for the extra time, but I want to start with, all of you know that the transit system that we currently have is not where we want it to be. And I would submit that many of us share the same frustration that I've had of how do we wrangle this thing to where we can figure out where are the areas that we need to be investing in and how do we do this in a manner in which we get what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I just want to say thank you to Bob for taking the chance on us and deciding to be and choosing to be at COIC in this really pivotal time. As you all know, at our budget meetings this last year, transportation and transit was the #1 priority. It's an area that we've been making incremental improvements, but we know that we're still not quite there yet. We are as close to being on the path of success that we've ever been. And you can tell by Bob, although the dry wit is, you do need to stay on task with him. But at the same time, his passion and dedication and knowledge is exactly what we need because we have a team that cares. They are committed to the work that they do and they want to be a part of COIC. They want to be a part of our organization. And so the investments that you make through the budget, the investments that you've made in the past is a celebration of that work and bringing someone like Bob on to help lead the charge and support that team and lift them in the way where we can play to their strengths really helps us as an organization, but also as a service provider to the region. So just wanted to put in those words of this is really your work too, that has got us to this place because it's a really important time for us to be making the investments that we know the community needs. So I'll be brief on, I wanted to do a quick update on the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. This is playing from the No Surprises playbook. As you all know, we've been leaning into the space in a couple of areas around the homelessness challenge. One is that we are the lead agency and the support for the Homeless Leadership Coalition, which is the funding that comes in through the federal government. We also then are the lead agency for the executive order funding for the governor's office. The Coordinated Houseless Response Office, as for those just as a refresher, is the Deschutes County and the cities therein pilot, and that is the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. The governor's office and the legislature has moved away from the pilots and they're moving into regional support for the efforts because many of the supports in the nonprofit network and the service provider network that we have actually is regional, not county specific. And so we are working and have been staffing the Coordinated Houseless Response Office to help them achieve the goals that they're required to achieve to successfully complete their pilot. At the same time, this evolution is happening alongside them. And so the Coordinated Houseless Response Office board may decide that they want to continue having a standalone pilot. And I have been quite clear with the administrators for those organizations that in order for us and our organization to continue to staff the effort, we really need to be in a space where we're supporting regional efforts that are helping the region move in the direction, especially given that the legislature and the governor's office is moving in that direction. If we want to help lift their work and make sure that it doesn't get minimized, but it gets evolved into other efforts that we are part of, such as the Regional Housing Council, which is where elected officials are at the table talking about many of the things that are being discussed at the Coordinated Housing Response Office. And then also we have the multi-agency committee, which is the governor's executive order committee that is required by us as the lead agency to staff as well. And so I want to bring that to you because it doesn't impact the board in terms of a policy decision, but it does impact in terms of my time and a statement that I'm making in terms of being able to support efforts that are alongside the efforts that you all are part of. The Coordinated Housing Response Office, we would celebrate that work if they choose to continue a pilot, but we wouldn't necessarily continue to offer our time in supporting that. We would be looking for a way to try to tie it in, but not necessarily continue to lead it. So there's that part. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, and thank you, Thomas, we are negotiating our contract. And so with ATU, and for just as a refresher, we have one union, and yes, there's an oddity. It's the same union for us as well as the provider that is providing the Bend Transit as well. And so ATU is we're active in our negotiations and things are going well. Just want to make sure that you are all apprised of that as well. The other thing I want to bring to your attention, the last thing would be that we are sending out those appointment letters. We've had years where it's difficult for us to get a quorum because we don't have the members seated. And so when you get that letter, it's going to your administrators, it's not going to you. But please be the person who's helping to get that ball up the right hill to make sure that we can get a board that is seated for a February board meeting. And with that, that's what I have.
Well done.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
So, unsanctioned camping, public lands, homeless, there's gonna be action. Hopefully more action, and I'm trying to be real careful how I say it here, but around the community of Lapine, around Sisters, east side of Redmond, north of Bend, south of Bend. There's gonna be a moment where action's gonna start, everybody's like, well, if they're gonna move, I'm gonna move. And as I say, I'm not even saying this with anger or resentment to the situation. But we all need to work together and take action together also. So I don't know how much that'll happen along here, but we all have our jurisdictions we're gonna go back to. I'm looking forward to it. We were threatened by wildfire this year, unsanctioned long-term camping. We thought, well, somebody's gonna spend some money and have a meeting and talk about it, but I'm gonna be leaning into this. Please don't.
Nice.
We'll get you a t-shirt.
Not quite sure what we're leaning into. Things are gonna happen.
Well,
whatever that
and
means.
having a discussion, because as I say, sometimes people are like, oh, no, we got it. And I've been through this for a couple of years now, and I'll be in office for a couple more years. We need to talk it out too. As I say, you and I might see it very differently. I'm not doing it with anger or resentment for anybody, but why do we have a land use system? People buy high dollar houses. We want to live in a very comfortable community and feel comfortable at night. And then there's unsanctioned human fire starts that are around us. So I was gonna say, I'm not mad at somebody, but we have got to do better than this.
And the other thing, Tony, you didn't mention, I think you were at Federal Lands Breakfast, we haven't paid the bill for last year.
Yeah, so the state and federal, all the fire response, they're gonna have a special session next week, emergency session of the legislature. So they're all getting together.
Yes.
And, the state is funded by payroll taxes. That's how the state revenue comes in, and they do have big dollars right now. So I think they'll be able to cover a lot of that, but if the cycle goes backwards where the economy isn't strong and fire season's happen and they don't have money, it could be a wild ride here.
How do
Bad
you
things
call in, like we had at my ranch, we had New Mexico and California.
Yeah.
How do you call them
You don't
back
pay the
in
bill, yeah.
when you don't pay your bill? And that's where we're sitting right now. So there is, I mean, it's very devastating, really.
Well, just as a little follow-up, so 7:28, any other comments? This is our last meeting of the year, it's our last of this group. It's been wonderful serving with you. Any other topics before we share? Any of your goodbyes? Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for serving. We got four,
Happy
we'll be back, but we'll go from there.
Have a wonderful holiday, and thank you so much for your service.
And thank you for the neighborhood impact.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, yep.